Good afternoon. I know we have a couple of people rolling in, but we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar, AI for Government Leaders and Staff, Practical AI Adoption, Change Readiness, and Real-World Applications. So this webinar, as always, is brought to you by CSG South Staff Alliance for Intergovernmental Leadership Committee, also known as SAIL. So for any of our first-time attendees who may be unfamiliar with CSG South or SAIL, please visit our website to learn more information about our organization and about our committees. We like to provide opportunities for networking with peers across the South. And like I said, if you would like to learn any more details about SAIL, please visit our website. A few things to note before we get started is that this session is being recorded. Participants may use the chat and the Q&A function to submit questions at any time. We welcome audience participation, and we'll try to make sure that we get to your questions. After the survey or after the webinar, we send out a short survey link. Please take a moment to complete it and share your feedback. We use it to look for our next speakers, to just make sure that our webinars are hitting the mark for you guys. So today's session will provide government leaders, managers, and staff with practical, non-technical introduction to AI and its growing impact on government operations. So to walk us through this discussion today, we have with us Natalya H. Natalya, please introduce yourself further and please roll into your presentation when you're ready.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. As Jaslyn said, my name is Natalya Ba. I am based in Bethesda, Maryland. And I established the Growth Group Academy. So my background is actually in project management. I have a master's in project management and I'm certified project management professional. But I really moved my focus towards leadership development and team building. So that includes things like, facilitating team building using self-assessments, helping leaders become stronger leaders. So I do trainings, but I also provide executive coaching and strategic advising. But what happened was that I really got interested in AI and the growth of AI, what was going to happen, what was that going to mean for us as not only leaders, but just employees? How is it going to change the way things work? And so the Association of Project Managers, which is called the Project Management Institute, it's been very ahead of the game on preparing for AI, and they actually have a certification. So if you see down here, PMP is just that I'm a project management professional, but I'm also certified to manage AI projects. So I spent 70 hours in the fall as a non-technical person learning about AI, and I really am making it my mission to talk to as many people as possible about how do we adjust to this new world. Now, what Jaslyn and CSG South did not know when they called me about possibly talking to you guys is that I was born in Arkansas. I grew up in Mississippi. I went to school in Tennessee, and I'm about to send my oldest child to LSU. So when I saw it was the South, clearly has a place in my heart, and I was very excited to get the opportunity to talk to you guys. So let's jump in. These are the things that we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about why we're talking about AI right now. We're also going to talk about just an AI overview for government, just the basic terminology and tools and just some real world applications. We're also going to talk about the AI adoption and really that change mindset. One of the things that when you manage a project, often those projects result in change, and people tend to have very visceral negative reactions to change. And so I've had to do a lot of work in understanding change management, how to help people through change. And obviously, the AI revolution is really going to be a major change that we're going to have to be handling and thinking about how do we help our ourselves and others prepare for that. I'm also going to do some live demonstrations of how you could potentially be using AI, and then I'm going to leave you with some key takeaways. Now, as she said, if you have a question, please put it in the chat or the Q&A. I'm happy to answer those as I go through, and we will have time at the end for some questions as well. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time, investing the time into talking about AI. And I would love if you had a chance in the chat to just kind of give me an idea of how often you use AI and do you use ChatGPT? Do you use Copilot? So if you could just, kind of put some information in there, it'd be great to kind of understand the starting point. Because what I find when I talk to different groups is how much people use it really varies. Sometimes people are using it for personal reasons, but maybe not so much at work yet. Why this is important is because AI is here. It may feel like that it is a futuristic thing, but it's really integrated into a lot of our day. We just don't necessarily think about it. So if you watch Netflix this weekend and it suggests what you might want to watch, that's going to be AI looking at your patterns of what you've watched in the past. When we talk to Alexa and ask Alexa something, it is understanding and responding to us because of a natural language processing that has been adapted so that we can interact with these machines and these models using just human language. You'll notice a lot of times your inbox sorts spam, or right now, even in my Gmail, it automatically suggests how I should respond to an email that I read. That is AI. Google Maps predicting traffic and rerouting us in real time, also AI. Amazon predicting what you want before you search for it. And then fraud alerts. So when your bank flags unusual transaction, it's using an AI pattern detection to see that that's not a purchase that you usually would make. So I think that we very quickly have found ourselves in a situation where AI is really being integrated into many of the ways that we interact with just basically how we get things done. And so we need to start thinking about how are we going to use it in our professional work, and what's the world going to look like, let's say in 6 months or a year. So I'm seeing that people are using it for the tone of how their letters, their emails, scheduling. I see Chat GPT, I see Copilot, so that's great. Let's talk about just a high level overview. Like I said, when I took this course, I didn't have a technological background. So AI has actually been something that's been worked on for many, many decades. And it started with this concept of machine learning. And I don't love that it uses the word, well, learning is okay. What it's not doing is thinking. It is basically learning patterns from data. So it's looking at more of like a probabilistic, like what happened in the past is going to help me guess what might happen in the future. So machine learning allows us to detect when there's looks like there might be fraud in some kind of benefits, or there might be irregular procurement patterns, right? That machine learning is how we have trained machines to learn patterns from data. We also have developed natural language processing, which is basically how we can interact with the computer using our human language. So as I am talking to you, if we were transcribing this, if I had an AI assisted transcriber on my note taker that I normally would have on, it can transcribe what I'm saying. It can then summarize what I said and give us immediate summary of what was said in our meeting because it understands how to process language. The next sort of step in all of this is that generative AI was developed, or Gen AI. And that means that now these models can create new content. So it's not just sort of looking at a pattern and learning, figuring out a pattern from data. Now it can create something new. It can create text, images, code, audio. It's not just classifying or predicting. And then finally, we have the large language models. So Generative AI is now been able to be trained on just vast, vast amounts of data. These models have been established using very complex algorithms. They have been trained on massive amounts of data. And those are really, the large language models are really the engines behind ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, some of the main types of AI tools that we're using. So you can see these are the the leading tools, right? We have ChatGPT, which is great for writing and analysis. Copilot is also strong. It has a real advantage because it is already built into Word, Excel, Outlook, or Teams. So for instance, right now, if if I'm not using Copilot and I don't have Copilot in my Microsoft system, then what I have to do is I draft something in Word and then I download it and then I would upload it to ChatGPT and have it change it. The benefit of Microsoft Copilot, excuse me, is that you can utilize AI within that Word document. So you don't have to transfer it out to an AI system. The AI is now built in to the program that you're working in. And Google Gemini has the same thing within Google Docs. You can utilize that AI that's called Gemini to make changes instead of having to transfer the document to another AI system and bring it back. Both with Copilot and with Gemini, and I think this is going to start happening more and more in our lives, kind of like it already has with Netflix, for example. These are uh, products that we have purchased. We have purchased Microsoft Suite, right? And now what is happening is they're integrating AI into a program that we've already been using. Claude is incredibly powerful. It's really good for careful reasoning, really long documents as well. Perplexity is excellent for research, fact checking. It is automatically going to give you the reference. You don't have to ask for it. That is how Perplexity works. And then there's Meta AI or Llama, which is really more common in more of an enterprise or research environment. So I'm glad to know I've seen ChatGPT, I've seen Copilot. Obviously your organizations are probably going to tell you what is allowed. But these are the leading tools, and whether you're using it in a personal or professional context, it's great to start sort of practicing with it. So I want to just give you guys some really key tips on what generative AI actually does. First of all, it is generating. It's not just retrieving. So, if you think about traditionally how we went about Googling, we would put into Google what we wanted to look for, and then it would generate for us a list of websites that it thought was close to what we wanted. And we would go into each website and see, is this what I'm looking for? But generative AI is not giving us those choices of websites. It's basically creating a summary for us to answer what we've asked for. And it's predicting that answer on what it believes will be the most useful response based on what we asked for. So it's not just retrieving a website and providing that website, it is now generating that summary. It also works in plain language. I don't need a coding language. I don't need any of that kind of information. I can interact with it just as I would a human. It does have a knowledge cutoff. So the thing with these models is that they constantly have to be retrained and they have to be updated. So it could be that it's being updated even every 6 hours. But if you're within that 6 hour window, it may not be able to get data that is immediate, that is the most recent data. So we have to be very aware that there could be a knowledge cutoff when we're asking it for information. And I think the most important thing I want people to walk away with is that it can be very confidently wrong. So these models sometimes hallucinate. That is the terminology that we use. That means that it will give you, a government policy. It will give you statistics and facts. It will give you a quote, and it will be very convincing as you look at it. And then when you ask for the reference and you try to look it up, you can sometimes find that it was just absolutely made up. So we have to be very aware of that as we are working with AI, that everything we do has to be checked. Everything we do has to be checked. There are other risk of using AI, in addition to the hallucination or the inaccuracy that can happen, of course, there can be data privacy and security issues. And working in state governments, personally identifiable information, classified information, of course, all of that can be at risk if you are using an AI tool that is not protected by your organization or your agency. We also have to be aware that the information that these models have been trained on can have bias in it, and that could lead to some biased results in data. So, for instance, if you are looking for medical data, and the majority of the medical data that has been inputted, that this model has been trained on, is only in urban areas, that could skew towards the urban areas and not provide the perspective or the information needed from the rural areas. So that's just an example of where there can be some bias and inequity that's built into the model or built into the data, and we want to be aware of that. We also don't want to be over reliant on it. We want to be aware of the fact that, our judgment and our brains is what we need to make AI actually be effective. I think, we have to make sure that people realize and understand that as great as AI is, it always has to have a human in the loop. It always has to have that human input. So we have to be very clear about who has accountability when using AI, right? The person using it, the person generating it, the human is the one that's going to be ultimately responsible. And that's also, you can kind of see that as well, in that they've already made the decision with copyright, federal copyright laws, that if something is generated 100% from AI, it cannot be copyrighted. So we've got to remember that there is no accountability for AI. It's all in the human. And then I talked about that these vendors that we use, like Microsoft or Google, they're just incorporating AI into those um, products that we purchase from them. But the problem is that if we're not careful, they could possibly be using our inputs and our information and training their future models. And so we want to be very careful with that in terms of any kind of potential data breach that could occur. And so, as I've been trying to stress, the human in the loop is important. I think it's obviously natural to be fearful of new things and changes, and we hear a lot of things on the news about what can happen with AI, but it's always going to require human review, and the accountability is going to always stay with people, because the context of what's happening and judgment cannot be automated. That's why I think it's important to understand that these machines are not thinking. We don't know how human beings think, so we can't create machines thinking. They're, looking at patterns, they're making determinations, but they're not thinking. So they're not going to understand the cultural context of something that's happening, the community history, political sensitivities, or mission priorities. You have to have human judgment for that. And then, because there can be errors and bias, we need the human to be involved to be able to protect from that happening. Now, there's another important term that I want to mention, and I love this term because I am kind of the furthest thing from an engineer. Like, I'll never be an engineer, but I'm now a prompt engineer. And all that means is that it is really becoming apparent that it is critical to be able to tell the AI very specifically what you want so that you can get the best information from it. So, for instance, all this means is that I may type into my AI, write a summary of the attached policy brief. Well, that is going to get me not what I need, right? It's just like if I was asking an employee to do something for me, I need to give them context, I need to give them information. So a stronger prompt would be act as a government communications specialist with expertise in plain language writing. Write a 3 paragraph summary of the attached policy brief for a general public audience. Use short paragraphs, no jargon, and a maximum of 150 words per paragraph. Do not include legal citations or technical terms. Do not recommend specific actions. So you can see how different the results are going to be. And AI is really only going to be as useful as the instructions it receives. So that's why this term of prompt engineering is becoming so important. Now, as you are, thinking about, well, how am I going to use AI and responsibly, there are some great questions that you can ask yourself. The first one is this data authorized for this tool? So you want to make sure you understand what your agency's approved platforms are and, be thinking about what is appropriate to be put into an AI tool. The second question is human review built into the process? You are responsible as an employee in making sure that you are reviewing and validating that information, or a qualified person is doing that. The third question is, can you verify the output? So you have to ask for the reference. If I ask AI for something and it gives me a quote, and I'm using usually not Perplexity, which provides the reference automatically, I will ask it for the reference and I will go to that reference and find it and make sure that it is the right and actual correct reference. So there have been cases where lawyers have generated legal briefs and then they've used AI and they've discovered that AI has made up court cases that don't actually exist. So you always have to verify the output. Of course, a question that you guys probably ask yourself all the time, does this serve the public interest? Of course, any use of any tool or any technology, we have to make sure that it's in alignment with our agency's mission. And then the last question is, are you ready to own the outcome, right? Because the tool is a tool. It's not a decision maker. It's something that you're going to use it to really help you. Really, I believe it's really going to help us with efficiency, and probably with effectiveness as well, but it's never going to be the decision maker. So you just want to remember that if you wouldn't put your name on it, it's not ready to go out. Okay, I'm going to head over. We're going to talk now about AI adoption and the change mindset. I'm just checking to make sure if I have any questions, just please let me know. I wanted to show you guys some examples of how federal and state agencies are deploying AI today. We have some federal examples here, and you will note that for every example I'm giving you, what am I doing? I'm including the source, right? Because it's really important that if I'm telling you that you've got to always get the source and you've got to know it, I want to show you that I have done the same thing in my process. So the Department of Veterans Affairs at a federal level is using AI to speed up veteran disability claim reviews. So that is being able to reduce wait times for veterans. The Department of Defense, the Air Force, and many private organizations as well are using predictive maintenance AI that allows them to keep aircraft operational longer, reduce repair cost, be more prepared about when maintenance is going to need to happen, which will then, of course, take that airplane out of service. And even the USDA Farm Service Agency is using AI. They're having AI actually analyze satellite imagery to verify when someone puts in an insurance claim for crops or to detect fraud. So these are three just very general, but there are actually more than, I mean, probably 10,000 different AI use cases that you can see. So if you see over here under Veterans Affairs, most federal agencies now have an AI use case inventory where you can go in and see all the ways that they are or have used AI within that agency. At the state level, I just found I wanted to find some examples outside of the South. In Colorado, they were the first state to pass an AI accountability law. That law requires bias audits for high risk AI usage. That is actually from the Colorado General Assembly. And yes, I did make sure that Bill SB 24-205 actually existed and check to make sure that that was actually the bill. Indiana saved money utilizing AI agents for answering calls to departments, so specifically child services departments that allows automated answers to common questions. You guys have probably utilized that if you're ever buying something, the chat bot might come up and ask you if you have any questions, for instance. And then I thought it was really interesting that in New York State is offering AI education and training now to over 100,000 state employees. So they have a artificial intelligence training tool that they are generated. Now I have a question. It says, is the information in AI similar to Wikipedia, meaning mistakes may be embedded into the information that is generated? That's a really interesting question because my understanding of Wikipedia is that people individually can go in and change it the way, they can put in what they want into the Wikipedia. I think the difference with AI is that the sources, like I think in Wikipedia, I don't know much about Wikipedia, but you probably could go in and see who changed that Wikipedia for that person, right? So if I had a Wikipedia page, which I certainly don't and never will, and you could see that I went in and changed something, then you know the source, like, oh, Natalya changed her Wikipedia page. With AI, the source of the data is not something that we can necessarily trace back, right? Because these models have been trained on so much data. Um, but certainly the data that it has been trained on could be wrong in the first place. And so you are going to get wrong information if that occurs. Good question. Thank you for asking that. So that was just to give you some real examples of government AI in action at the federal and state levels. What I want to talk about now is the fact that there is this natural human response to change, right? You're going to have the people that embrace it, that love it, that dive in, that experiment, and they kind of become champions of it. You're going to have the majority who are probably going to sort of watch and wait and see what happens and make sure that it's really there to stay. And then you're going to have the portion that may push back or withdraw or actively oppose the change. And this is the case where I think we need to be thinking from our own perspective and of the perspective of the people that we work with, that they are not resisting change just to resist change, right? They may feel a sense of loss, of control. And so we want to be addressing that loss and understanding that the more people that are resisting or opting out, the the less likely the transition is to be quickly successful. So there is a change management process or methodology called ADKAR, and stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And I think that this can be very well applied to the AI transition, right? Because you need to be able to explain to people within your organization, why are we using AI? Why now? Why this agency? So you can communicate how AI, for instance, can help you serve your constituents better, or how it can reduce the burden that your staff may have. The second step is to make sure that desire is there, that people understand what's in it for them, right? What are the benefits of using AI? Maybe you're going to be able to do more interesting work because some of the more day-to-day work is going to be already taken up by AI, for instance. The third step is knowledge. So, what do I need to know to do my job with AI? So, more role specific training on AI, not just general training, kind of like what I'm showing you here, but how do you actually use this in the work that you do every day? A is for ability, which is using it actually in your work, which it sounds like some of you guys are already doing. So having the approved tools and having time to practice and talk to other people about how to use it best. And then, of course, reinforcement, making sure that we sustain this change. It's eventually going to be in performance goals, for instance. It's going to be in how we look at and our expectations of employees and what the information or knowledge we expect them to know to be able to do the work. So this ADKAR is it's an already proven change methodology, but it works specifically very well with helping people within organizations adapt to the AI changes as well. But if any of this is missing, if people don't have awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, or reinforcement, you may not have a successful adoption. Okay, so I got another question. Is there a standard for determining the level of human review recommended when AI is being used in high volume scenarios, applications, complaints? My concern being if the standard is too high, it undermines the benefit of using AI to review high volume tasks. So I don't think there's a standard yet, and I think that's actually a really excellent question. And I actually really like the way that you're thinking about it. And I do hope that at some point those standards will exist. Um, I think what's interesting and what I'm seeing when I'm working and talking to different groups is that if we look at, I just want you to think about if you have AI and AI is reviewing a large amount of applications, let's say, and maybe from a human perspective, as applications came in, maybe you are trying to check a statistical portion of the applications to make sure that they're good applications. I know this isn't the best example, but just to give you an idea. I think the difference is that AI can now look at every single application. It can scan and review every single application. And so the human might, you know, we believe that scanning of those applications and going through them and maybe ranking them or something like that, um, that's going to be able to be done very quickly by AI. And what the human will need to do is not necessarily check every single one, but do a statistical sampling of it and check and make sure. So when I'm saying that there is human review needed, it's absolutely necessary. But I'm not saying when it's a large volume that they have to check every single one. I think we would still be able to do a statistical sampling to make sure that it's valid. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please add to it. All right, I want to show you some live demonstrations now, and I also want to really highlight what are some of the ways that we can use AI. So the first one is we can use it to draft, summarize, and translate. It's a great communication tool. So we can draft memos, briefings very quickly. We can condense really lengthy reports or legislation to a quick summary, and we can translate things into plain English for our constituents. Or we can adapt communication. Some people like a lot of communication. Some people don't like a lot of communication. And in some jurisdictions, you're actually going to need to be translating things into numerous different languages as well. Okay, so I am going to do my first example right here. And the first one I'm doing as an example is in my chat GPT. And you can see that you would just log in. I pay for this, so I have a plus. I have the ability to click new chat. I try to have my projects by what the project is that I'm working on. And I put in a prompt here. It says, act as a senior government communications specialist with experience running interagency meetings and public events. Create a detailed meeting agenda for a project planning session. The CSG South 2025 annual conference, I think it's 2026, but we may have this wrong, is scheduled for October 14th through 17th in Nashville, Tennessee. The planning team includes staff from member states. This is the third planning meeting. The team has already finalized the venue and keynote speakers. Today's focus is on session planning, sponsor logistics, and communication strategy. Format as a professional meeting agenda with a header, time blocks, facilitator, notes column. Do not include meals. Keep in agenda items at one sentence. Use plain professional language, no jargon. The meeting should feel efficient, well organized, not overloaded. So I'm just going to send the prompt and see what it comes up with. I could have provided a link to the actual annual conference or the CSG South website. Um, I didn't do that. You can see how quickly that was done, right? It's so quickly. You can see up here it has the I'll put in the date because I didn't provide it. It has the information, it has the meeting objective, it has a facilitator, it has notes. It obviously had to make some stuff up because I didn't give it all the information, but you can see how quickly it generates it. Is it all going to be perfect? Am I going to take this and go run that meeting? No, I'm going to then take it, and this is my starting point. So I know that for some people, just the blank page and getting started sometimes can be really overwhelming. And that's what's great about ChatGPT or any of these AI tools is it can just create that first draft for you and then you improve it after. So you can see we have all this information. It even gave us potential action items that we could utilize and insert the due date at the end. So that's the first sort of example that I wanted to show you. Now, this is another example. This is Claude. Welcome to Claude. This is not Claude on my desktop. I actually can download an app, but my computer is from 2021, and Claude on the desktop is so powerful that it keeps basically knocking my computer out. So I'll be buying another computer soon. Same thing, you can put a new chat. You've got all the list of chats that I've already done. I can go back to them. And for this one, I said, act as a policy analyst who specializes in translating complex federal health reports into clear decision-ready summaries for state agency leaders. Summarize the report excerpt I will provide below. The audience is state government directors and commissioners, senior leaders who are not health policy specialists. They need to understand the key findings and implications for their states within 2 minutes of reading. Structure your output as a 3-sentence executive summary at the top, 5 bullet points listing the most important findings, 2 or 3 implications for state governments, and 1 recommended next step. Use plain language throughout. Do not use clinical terminology without plain language explanation. Do not include statistics that appear fewer than twice in the source document. Do not editorialize or add opinions not supported by the text. And so what I'm going to do here is you see that there's a plus, and look at all the things I can add: files or photos. I could take a picture. There's a lot of things I could do here, but I'm going to add a file. And the file that I am going to add, I'm going to come up here under my recents, is a excerpt of I think it's from NIH, that's about mental health. It's a federal health report that I excerpted into there. And now I'm going to push it, and here we go. It's going to write the file. Now, as I said, or as I meant to say, Claude is very powerful. And you can see that it went through some steps before it actually did it and still was incredibly fast. So you can see it gave me the executive summary within 2 minutes. Somebody can understand what it's saying. It gave me key findings, right? It gave me implications for state governments and recommended next steps. I am not going to hand this to somebody. I'm going to go through and I'm going to make sure that these key findings match with what is in the document. I want to make sure that it did not hallucinate on me. It says, can you explain the concept of projects in GPT? I've typically been opening new threads as needed for projects and then find that GPT becomes sluggish and prone to mistakes? Once a thread becomes lengthy, would a project prevent that? Yes, that's excellent. Let me show you this next slide, and then I will show you after my next example. So I will come back to that because that is actually a really great question. All right, I just want to show you that another way that we can really utilize or maximize AI tools is to research, analyze, and plan. So we can do a lot of policy research, just kind of like what I said, but even deeper, where we're scanning lots of policy documents, not just summarizing one and looking for precedent summaries and gaps and things like that. It can happen so fast. We also can take survey analysis. So we can upload lots of constituent survey data, especially open-ended answers, and look and be able to get patterns and themes and even sentiment across, even a tons of responses. And we can also use it for strategic planning. So you could quickly draft a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing a project or a program or an agency. It can run risk assessments, and it also can run scenario planning, which is really something that can be very helpful. When I was in graduate school, I had to learn all these really horrible Excel formulas and all the statistics to be able to understand how to run scenarios for what could potentially happen. If the price of gas goes up and the price of the cost of the hourly wage of the worker goes up, how's that going to, by 10% each, how's that going to impact my project? Okay, but what if one of those things happen and the other one goes down? How could that impact my project in the future? Now, those scenario planning can be done, scenario testing can be done so much more effectively. And that's one thing that I'm really struck by as somebody who probably wasted too much time in their life learning Excel formulas, is that now in Excel, when you have Copilot in Excel, you don't actually have to use the formula anymore. You just tell it what you want it to do, and it does it. So the last example, now I'm in Copilot. I'm just in Copilot from Microsoft. It's not in my uh, Microsoft Word or anything. This is just Copilot. And I said act, and again, I'll show you over here. It's the same thing. Chats, library, projects, all of that. And what I said is act as a public opinion research analyst who specializes in analyzing open-ended government survey responses, analyze the constituent survey responses attached, and produce a structured finding report. These reports are from a public satisfaction survey conducted by the State Department of Motor Vehicles following in-person office visits. The department director will use the findings to prioritize service improvements for the next fiscal year. About 200 responses were collected. And then it says provide overall rating, top 3 themes, 2 representative direct quotes. So what I'm doing again is I'm adding the document, and I have the survey data here that I've already put in, and I'm going to have it work on it. Now, I could, if I had, let's say I use Google Forms for the survey, I could probably direct it to my Google form. So again, you see how quickly this was. It gave me, it's an overall mixed rating. The top 3 themes are wait times, queuing, and capacity, inconsistent or confusing information, staff interactions, both positive and negative. There were a couple of other lower frequency themes, and these were actionable requests. So, and you can see that often at the end, it will offer you other things it can do. It can provide me a visual summary, a presentation read version, a comparison of themes across positive and negative. So I'm going to just say visual summary, and let's see what it comes up with. So I don't love that. I thought it would make maybe um, some kind of like a graph or something. So this is where the question that was just asked about the projects is so important. This is called a chat. And if I want to continue talking about this question, I need to stay in the same chat. I don't want to open a new chat if I'm talking about the same subject that I've talked about here, because I'm already talking to it about this subject here. However, if I want to start a new topic to talk about, then I'm going to need to start a new chat. And then that thread will need to be different. So I'm going to try to switch back over to ChatGPT, and I believe that you can still see my ChatGPT, and I want to go down to projects, and I'll see if I can. Um, so this is a smart city project. That's not really a great project. Well, I'll show you this one. This is when my child was applying for college. Actually, the way that I got into ChatGPT was using it as her college counselor. So you can see that I'm trying to get you into the project to see that what I was able to do, of course, now it's LSU, but there was a lot more where I just put in where should she try to go to college? Here's her GPA. What are her chances of getting in? What is her merit aid chances? And so what that meant is that I could go into the project, um, let's say trip, and then all my chats about the trip will be kept in the same place. And that does help with the question that was asked about, finding that it becomes prone to mistakes or sluggish, because then you'll have multiple chats about a topic within. And I'm not sure why. It's really interesting. This is the kind of stuff that happens. Like it's not letting me. Okay, so here's an example. These are classes, and you can see that all the chats about that topic are in here. So if I ask a question, a new chat within this project, it can pull from all of these past discussions I've had. And that goes back to the concept that as you are interacting with your tool, you are actually training it. So the model itself is trained, of course, by the organizations or the companies that own them. But as I talk to ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, I'm asking it to do something. If it doesn't do it right or it doesn't do it the way I want, I always tell it because the next time I ask it, I want it to remember because it has been trained. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, please put it in the chat because I'm happy to talk more about that. But I want to cover the key takeaways, and I do want to save some time for some more questions. These are just sort of the key takeaways I wanted you guys to have from today. AI is already transforming how our government serves their constituents, both at the federal and the state level. So we really want to think about, how do I start learning and utilizing AI? Human oversight is non-negotiable. So everything really has to be reviewed, even like that summary that I showed you. I would still go back in and at least do a spot check that the statistics it provided me were actually correct. Data sensitivity is going to matter. You've got to be really careful about what you're putting in, even into an approved system, just to make sure that PII is not lost or, gets out. And we have to be aware that different people are going to have different reactions to AI. So some people are going to fight it, they're going to be fearful of it, others are going to jump on it and run with it. But using that ADKAR model, I'm really hoping can be a way to be thinking about how to help people through that process. And generative AI can handle, I gave you guys some great examples of how you could be using it today, right? It can handle drafts and summaries and research and analysis. And that's just really scratching the surface. I mean, there are ways to set up your workflows automatically where AI is running the workflow and actually conducting the work using what you've set up for it. You're just checking that that workflow is correct and that what it's generating is correct. We're not even talking about that in this session. We're just staying at the very high level of how you as a leader or a staff member can begin using it. But the other things that are coming and that are being used, it goes much deeper. It's really going to be interesting to see how this transforms how we work. And then I always recommend that people look at one task that they have to do next week and just try one of the tools and see how it goes. And so taking that a little bit further, I just wanted to provide some practical actions that you could take. Whenever I have a chance to talk or work with people or train people, I always want them to have what I've talked about be something they can do actionably with it afterwards. So, check your agency's AI policy and experiment. If you haven't been doing it, even if it's just at home, use your personal and start using it for personal things. 15 minutes a day for a week will really start to get you not only comfortable with using the tool, but it will strengthen your ability to do the prompting in a way that really maximizes the tool. The second practical action is to utilize it. So to take a real work product and let AI draft it, maybe even that first draft so that it gives you a starting point to work from. I would say that when I ask AI to draft to generate something, first of all, I don't ask for a draft because I don't believe that the model understands the difference between a draft and a final product. So whatever it gives me, right, I'm going to look at it and I'm very rarely going to accept the first thing it gives me, right? I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to ask for a different way to word something. So it's a good first step, but you'll begin to learn how to sort of go through and utilize it and maximize it the more you practice. I also think it's great to share your AI wins with other people, right? So, as you are using AI and maybe you found a way that was really beneficial for you to use it in your job, talking about it with your teammates or your colleagues can be really helpful. And that leads to number four, which is discussing. So, discussing as a team, how can we use AI? What are ideas of how we can use AI, and really making it, especially now because it's the beginning of what's happening and there's so many routes that we can take, there's so many things that we can be doing. Being able to discuss that as a team can be a really great way to learn together. And then finally, number five is learn. Just try to stay curious. There's some great AI letters out there. There's some great AI podcasts. There's lots of news stories about AI advances as well. And your organizations, much like New York State, may be providing AI training, and trying to maximize that would be great. So I really have enjoyed talking to you guys. I hope you guys felt this was helpful. I'd love any feedback that you have. It's hard when I come into a situation where I don't know kind of what you already know or what you specifically use, but I wanted to be able to give you guys some examples from, these three sort of main ones that people are using right now, which is ChatGPT, Copilot, and Claude. So I'm just going to see if we have any other questions. I'm checking my Q&A. Jaslyn, any questions?
Thank you, Natalia. We'll ask one question. I'll ask one
Sure.
question from our pre-discussed Q&A, and then we'll
Yep.
wrap it up, and I hope everybody has a good Friday. So how can government leaders balance innovation with responsible AI use,
Yeah.
particularly around ethics, transparency,
Yes.
privacy, and then public trust? Because we know there's some hesitancy for change from employees, but also the public
Yes.
has the same fears.
That is such an excellent point. Thank you for asking that because absolutely the change is not just difficult for those of us from a work situation, but of course, you're right. The public can be very worried about that too. And when you talk about ethics around responsible AI usage, it really is important that organizations are very open about where they're using AI. So I think that's one of the reasons that the federal government is it's been pretty quick to have their AI use cases by federal agency put on the website. So it's very clear to people. You can actually go in and really understand how AI is being used. And so I think the leaders are definitely, you're right. It is a huge balance between innovation and, responsible AI usage. And so having governance around how AI is going to be used. Leaders, I think, have a particular responsibility to make sure that they're understanding AI, that they're utilizing AI, and that they're talking to their employees about it. And because we already have responsibility as leaders, right? You're already responsible for public trust and the employees that you are managing. But now you're now responsible for this other potential risk, which is AI. You're responsible for anything generated out of it. You're responsible for your employees utilizing it. So it is a real, I think, a particular responsibility for leaders to say, yes, this innovation is here, but maybe part of my job is going to be making sure that we're using it responsibly and almost being the example for the employees as well.
Well, thank you. Um, I learned a lot. Um, Thank you. For seeing no more questions in the chat. We'll go ahead and thank Natalia for sharing your insights with us today and for the audience for joining us. All registered attendees will receive a follow-up email with a recording link and any additional resources from today's session. And also the recording from today's session will be available on our website. So we hope you will all be able to make it to our next SEL webinar. It will be on Friday, August the 7th. We are not going to host one in July because our annual conference is going to be the 11th, I believe, through the 15th of July. And so we will pick back up with our webinar schedule in August, and we will share that registration link as well as that topic soon. So thank you again, Natalia. I hope that everybody has a great afternoon and a restful weekend.